What is it that truly drives a man toward intimacy? Is it physical hunger or something more elusive? Something unspoken and quietly aching beneath the surface? Why do so many men feel hollow after sex? Not just tired in the body but weary in the soul. These are not abstract questions, they are urgent. Carl Jung believed that what we repress eventually governs us in silence. That male desire, far from being just biological impulse, is deeply tied to the psyche, to the longing for wholeness, recognition, and emotional restoration. Beneath the mask of lust lies a more painful truth, a hunger for presence, for validation, for unconditional love. This is a message left behind, but most have never heard it because it demands we look at parts of ourselves we spent years avoiding. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Mental Dose channel and join our Telegram community where you'll get early access to new videos and insights on personal and spiritual growth. Now, let's begin this journey not toward answers, but toward deeper questions, the kind that awaken what has long been sleeping inside. When a man seeks out sex, what is he truly pursuing? Western culture frames desire as a natural drive for pleasure or reproduction, often reducing it to physical release or conquest. But from a Jungian perspective, what seems like lust is often the psyche reaching outward in desperation for contact with the self. Saw libido as psychic energy, not just sexual, but symbolic, often shaped by deeper psychological needs. A man who fixates on physical pleasure may in fact be expressing a need to be seen, accepted, even nurtured without ever being aware of it. He believes he's chasing satisfaction, but he's actually offering up his body in exchange for a fleeting sense of validation. This is not weakness. It is a pattern inherited and reinforced by a culture that teaches men to earn love rather than receive it. And so sex becomes a performance, a way to hide the vulnerability of wanting to be chosen simply for existing. The tragedy is that this emotional transaction leaves most men emptier than before. They leave beds, relationships, even marriages feeling more fragmented because what they were truly asking for was never acknowledged in the first place. But the unconscious doesn't stay quiet. And if ignored, it begins to speak louder. First in fatigue, then in confusion, then in patterns that repeat endlessly. According to Jung, the shadow is everything we refuse to see in ourselves. Weakness, fear, neediness, longing, shame. For men, this shadow is often shaped by early emotional deprivation, by the unspoken belief that affection must be earned through control, competence, or silence. When a man enters intimacy, the armor he wears begins to crack. A single touch, a long gaze, a moment of vulnerability. These become mirrors reflecting parts of himself he has worked hard to bury. What looks like confidence may hide desperation. What seems like seduction may be a quiet plea to be held, not just touched. In many cases, the man isn't seeking pleasure. He's reenacting the unmet needs of a boy who never felt safe. And yet, the world only sees the surface. A man's pain often wears the mask of strength. The more he feels unseen, the more he tries to perform worthiness. But behind the mask lies the fear of rejection, the terror of not being enough, the ache to be accepted without conditions. And in those moments of intimacy where silence is louder than words, that child within makes his return. This is not psychological metaphor. It is a lived felt reality. The shadow is always present, and in moments of vulnerability, it doesn't whisper, it screams. Jung believed that men who have not integrated their inner feminine, the anima, will inevitably project it onto women. That means many men fall in love not with who a woman is but with what she represents. A healer, a mother, a redeemer, she becomes a stand-in for everything he has lost or never claimed within himself. This is not love, it's projection, and it almost always ends in collapse, because when she inevitably reveals her flaws, when she can no longer carry the weight of his unconscious, the man feels betrayed, not because she failed him, but because the illusion has shattered. This idealization sets up a cruel emotional trap. The more he needs her to be perfect, the more he resents her humanity. She cannot save him. And that unspoken truth leaves him oscillating between worship and contempt. The woman, meanwhile, becomes exhausted under the pressure of holding space for a soul that hasn't yet held itself. What he seeks in her, a mirror of his own denied softness, intuition, and emotional depth, can only be reclaimed by turning inward. As long as he avoids this, intimacy becomes a theater where his unhealed wounds play out in cycles disguised as romance. To move beyond this, he must reclaim the feminine within himself. Only then can he meet a woman as an equal, whole, conscious and free from projection. What happens when sex becomes more than an act? Jung understood that intimacy, when conscious, is a spiritual transaction, not in the mystical sense, but in the psychological sense of two souls opening their internal landscapes to each other. Most men are conditioned to perform in bed. Technique, controlled dominance, these become the measure of masculinity. But true connection begins where performance ends. When a man stops trying to prove something and instead chooses to be fully present, something sacred opens. The body is no longer a weapon or tool. It becomes an oracle. The act of touch becomes a transmission of truth. But for this to happen, the man must be grounded in himself. If he is not, sex becomes a place of loss because he's not just engaging a body. He's engaging an energy system, a history, a trauma pattern. Jung emphasized that the unconscious is most active in intimate relationships. Sex is not neutral. It's an exchange of shadow, longing, and archetypal projections. If the man is unaware, this can lead to a quiet form of spiritual erosion. He leaves the encounter drained, not knowing why. Because it's not just about who he touches, but about how present he is with himself when he does. The real transformation happens when a man turns inward, when he begins to notice the patterns that dominate his intimate life, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Jung warned that whatever we do not make conscious will rule us as fate, and for many men, their intimate choices are shaped by unconscious scripts written in childhood and reinforced by culture. Breaking this loop doesn't begin with changing partners. It begins with changing the relationship to the self. That means facing the inner child who was never chosen, the one who performs kindness in hopes of being loved, the one who hides his need under sarcasm, control, or detachment. The work is to stop outsourcing wholeness to others and begin offering it inward. This is not an abstract process. It's a slow dismantling of everything the world told you to become. It's learning to be enough without applause. It's learning to touch another human being without needing to be saved. Until a man knows who he is beneath the armor, every sexual encounter becomes a mask rehearsal. But when he steps into integration, into emotional honesty, then intimacy stops being performance and starts being presence. Carl Jung said that the unconscious always finds a way to be expressed, and for men, sex often becomes its loudest language. But what if desire wasn't something to conquer or control, but something to decode? What if every craving, every fixation, every repeated heartbreak was not random, but the soul asking for your attention? This is your invitation to stop treating sex as an escape and start treating it as a mirror. Because every time you give yourself unconsciously, you risk losing a piece of the self you were meant to protect. But when you approach intimacy with awareness, with discernment, with presence, everything changes. You're no longer at the mercy of your shadow. You become its interpreter. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, leave a comment below with what resonated the most. Your story might be exactly what another man needs to read today. And if you're ready to keep diving deeper into this kind of work, subscribe to Jung Psychiatric, where we're not just talking about sex, but about becoming whole. This isn't performance. This is the path back to your soul.